Out now, take your bundle and go, and do not think to come crawling back when the cold sharpens your appetite for gratitude. The Duke of Otterholme reined in his horse at the gates of Fenwick House, watching from the shadows of the beeches, a scene that turned his blood to ice. A hard, handsome woman in an expensive pelisse stood upon the front steps of the fine country estate. Below her, on the gravel, stood a girl in a threadbare gray gown, clutching a small cloth bundle to her chest. The woman was casting her out into the bitter winter afternoon, as one might turn out a stray. Julian, Duke of Otterholme, had not intended to witness anything. He had ridden over from his own estate regarding a boundary line and drainage dispute with the late Sir Henry Finn, a matter he had assumed would now be settled with the widow. Instead, he had arrived at precisely the wrong, or as it would prove, precisely the right moment. He did not announce himself. Unseen in the cold blue shadow of the trees, he sat his horse and watched. "I have done nothing, Lady Vane," the girl said. Her voice trembled, yet she held her ground. "I have kept your accounts, mended your linens, and taught your daughters their letters, asking for nothing but a roof since my father died. What have I done that you should turn me out in December?" "You exist," the woman on the steps replied with a cold precision Julian would remember for the rest of his life. "You are Henry's daughter by his first wife, and every soul in this county who looks at you is reminded that this house and its acres were hers before they were mine, and should, by right, have gone to you, not to my girls. You are an inconvenience, Clara, a living reproach. Your father, God rest his foolishness, left you nothing but my charity, and I have decided my charity is exhausted. My daughters are to be presented this season, and I will not have a poor relation in a gray gown creeping about the house, reminding the world that they are the second family, and you are the first." She smiled, and the smile was the worst thing about her. "There is a coaching inn 4 miles east. I am told they sometimes take on girls to scrub. It is more than you deserve." So, the girl's name was Clara. She was the true daughter of the house, dispossessed, unpaid, worked like a servant, and now flung out entirely so that a grasping stepmother's own daughters might shine without a rival. Dưới đây là bản chỉnh sửa hoàn chỉnh cho đoạn văn tiếp theo, đã xóa bỏ các mốc thời gian và sửa lại toàn bộ các lỗi từ vựng do nhận diện giọng nói. AI transcript. Julian had spent his life among the cruelties of the great world, and he had thought himself past being shocked by them. He was wrong. Something in the sight of that girl, the straight spine, the trembling voice that would not break, the small, pathetic bundle that held, no doubt, the whole of all she owned, reached into him and closed a hard, cold fist around his heart. He did not act at once. That was not his way. He was a deliberate man and a formidable one, and he had learned that the surest vengeance is the patient kind. He watched Lady Vane turn and sweep back into the house. He watched the great door close. He watched Clara Finn stand alone on the gravel of the home that had been her mother's, looking up for a long moment at the windows, and then square her thin shoulders and turn, with a dignity that undid him, toward the road east, toward the coaching inn and the scrubbing that was more than she deserved. And then, and only then, the Duke of Otterholme rode out of the shadow of the beeches. He did not know her. He had never spoken to her. He knew only what he had seen in the space of 5 minutes at a stranger's gate. But he knew, with the certainty of a man who had spent 40 years learning to read people at a glance, that he had just watched something rare cast out by something base, and that if he rode home and did nothing, he would never again be able to look at himself in a glass. Julian had spent his life among the cruelties of the great world, and he had thought himself past being shocked by them. He was wrong. Something in the sight of that girl, the straight spine, the trembling voice that would not break, the small, pathetic bundle that held, no doubt, the whole of all she owned, reached into him and closed a hard, cold fist around his heart. He did not act at once. That was not his way. He was a deliberate man and a formidable one, and he had learned that the surest vengeance is the patient kind. He watched Lady Vane turn and sweep back into the house. He watched the great door close. He watched Clara Finn stand alone on the gravel of the home that had been her mother's, looking up for a long moment at the windows, and then square her thin shoulders and turn with a dignity that undid him toward the road east, toward the coaching inn, and the scrubbing that was more than she deserved. And then, and only then, the Duke of Otterholme rode out of the shadow of the beeches. He did not know her. He had never spoken to her. He knew only what he had seen in the space of 5 minutes at a stranger's gate. But he knew, with the certainty of a man who had spent 40 years learning to read people at a glance, that he had just watched something rare cast out by something base, and that if he rode home and did nothing, he would never again be able to look at himself in a glass. Your late father and I had a small dispute over a boundary, which I confess I no longer care about in the slightest, he said. What I care about is that I have just watched a woman I take to be the rightful daughter of that house sent off to scrub floors so that her stepmother's daughters might have no rival at their presentation. Have I understood it correctly? Clara had gone very still at the word Duke. He watched her recalculate everything, watched the weariness deepen, because a duke taking an interest in a friendless girl on a lonely road was, in her experience of the world, unlikely to mean anything kind. Your Grace need not trouble himself, she said, and there was steel under the exhaustion. I have no claim on your notice, and I want none. Whatever charity you are minded to offer, I would rather walk to Harlow and scrub honestly than accept it. I have had my fill of being at the mercy of people who hold my bread over my head. Good day. She turned and walked on. Julian, standing in the road with his horse's reins in his hand, found that his admiration for her had just doubled. She had refused a duke's charity on a freezing road, with a scrubbing post her only alternative, simply because she would not trade one dependence for another. It was the proudest, most foolish, most magnificent thing he had seen a soul do in 20 years, and it decided him entirely. I am not offering charity, he called after her. She did not stop. Then what? He caught up with her in 3 strides, leading his horse. I do not yet know, he said honestly. I am not a man who acts on impulse, and I am acting on one now, which is a novelty I am still adjusting to. But I know this much. I will not ride home and leave you to walk to Harlow. You may refuse my charity. I honor you for it. But you cannot refuse me the road. It is a public one, and I am going the same way. Walk then, if you will not ride, but you will walk beside a witness. And when we reach Harlow, if you still wish to scrub, I will not stop you. I will only ask that you first hear a thing I mean to propose, and then choose freely, with a full belly and a warm fire, which is more than that woman on the steps offered you. They reached Harlow as the last light failed. The Duke of Otterholme took a private parlor at the inn, ordered a fire built up and dinner brought, and installed Clara Finn beside the hearth with a shawl the landlady found for her. He did not once, by word or look, presume upon her. Slowly, over the warmth and the soup, he watched the frozen weariness in her thaw, by degrees, into something wearier still, but no longer quite so brittle. He learned her story in pieces. Her mother had died when she was small. Her father had married Lady Vane within the year, a handsome, ambitious widow with 2 daughters of her own. From that day on, Clara had been slowly, deliberately reduced from the daughter of the house to a poor relation, and from a poor relation to an unpaid servant, her mother's fortune quietly absorbed, her father too weak or too fond to protect her. When Sir Henry died, the last shield was gone. She had stayed on because she had nowhere else to go, and had made herself useful past all reproach. She had learned, she said, not to hope for anything, because hope in that house was a thing that got slapped down. And you never once thought to leave? Julian asked. A gentlewoman with your accomplishments, you might have found a place as a governess, a companion. I thought of it every day, Clara said. But a governess needs a character, a reference, a good word from her last household. And who was to write mine? Lady Vane? She would have written that I was insolent and light-fingered, ruining me for any respectable house in England, and enjoyed doing it. I was trapped, Your Grace, as neatly as a bird in a cage, kept just poor enough that I could not fly, and just useful enough that she would not quite let me starve. Until this season, when my continued existence became inconvenient to her daughter's prospects, and then the cage door opened, and I was thrown out of it. And here I am, warmer than I have been in a year, being dined by a duke, and quite unable to work out why. Julian set down his glass. It was time, he judged, to say the thing. I will tell you why, he said. Because I am 40 years old, Miss Finn, and I have been the Duke of Otterholme for half of them. In all that time, I have never once seen anyone do what you did on that road this afternoon. You stood in the snow with nothing in the world but a bundle and a scrubbing post ahead of you, and a duke offered you charity, and you refused it because you would not trade one man's mercy for another's, because you had rather earn your bread on your knees than eat it as a dependent. Do you know how rare that is? I am surrounded every day of my life by people who would sell their souls for a fraction of my notice, and a penniless girl on a freezing road told me to keep my charity and good day to me. I have not been able to think of anything else since. Clara's color had risen. I did not mean to be uncivil. You were not uncivil. You were magnificent, which is a different thing entirely, and I do not think anyone has told you so in a very long time. He leaned forward. Here is what I propose, and I ask you to hear the whole of it before you refuse. I have a mother, the Dowager Duchess, who keeps my house and has despaired these 10 years of my ever marrying. She has been begging me to find a companion for her, a gentlewoman of sense and spirit, to bear her company and manage her correspondence. The post is real. It pays well. It comes with your own rooms and a fair wage paid into your own hand, and it requires a reference from no one but me. It is honest work, and it is yours if you want it. Not charity, a position earned by the accomplishments that woman used and never paid you for. You may take it and owe me nothing. Or you may walk to your scrubbing post in the morning with my blessing. But I would be a poor sort of man if I let you scrub floors at Harlow when I have a household that needs exactly what you are, and would be the better for you in it. Clara stared at him across the firelight. A companion to a Dowager Duchess, she repeated slowly. In your household? In my household. And what? She said. And here the old weariness flared again, sharp and unafraid. Does the Duke of Otterholme expect in return that he does not say aloud? For I have learned, your grace, that when the great offer the friendless a great deal for very little, there is generally a price hidden in the folds of the offer, and I would rather see it plainly now than discover it later in the dark. Nothing, he said. I expect nothing that you would not freely and gladly give. And if you never give anything but honest service to my mother, that is the whole of the bargain, and it is enough. I will not pretend I did not notice your face, Miss Finn, or your spirit, or that I rode away from Fenwick House unmoved. I am a man, and not a blind one. But I have too much regard for what you did on that road to insult it by making my help conditional on your favor. You will have your own rooms, your own wage, your own locking door, and my word as a gentleman that your position depends on nothing but your work. If anything more should ever grow between us, it will grow because you chose it freely from a place of safety, or it will not grow at all, and you will still have your rooms and your wage. That is the price. There is no other. I have hidden nothing in the folds. For a long moment, Clara Finn looked at him, searching his face with the desperate care of a person who has been deceived too often to trust an open hand. And whatever she found there, Julian never knew exactly what, it was enough. Then I accept, she said. The position, nothing more for now. But I warn you, your grace, I am very good at what I do, and I keep excellent accounts. If I find you have lied to me about so much as a farthing of the wage, I shall walk to Harlow after all, and you will have lost your mother's companion and gained nothing. A faint, exhausted, disbelieving smile touched her lips. It is the best offer I have had in 7 years. It is the only offer I have had in 7 years that did not come with a slap behind it. I should be a fool to refuse it. You would, Julian agreed gravely. And you are not a fool. It is, I find, among the things I most admire about you. The Dowager Duchess of Otterholme, who had expected her son to send her some meek and grateful nobody, took one look at Clara Finn and pronounced herself delighted. She has spirit, the old lady told Julian privately on the second day. She contradicted me twice at breakfast, and was right both times, and did not apologize for it. I have not been so entertained in years. Where did you find her? Being thrown out of her own home, said Julian, by a woman who wanted her mother's house without her mother's daughter in it. The dowager's shrewd old eyes rested on her son's face for a moment. I see, she said, and you have installed her as my companion, and hedged her about with wages and locking doors, and a great show of disinterest, so that no one, least of all the girl, can accuse you of anything but charity nobly done. Julian, I have known you 40 years. You did not fall into a temper over a boundary dispute and come home with a companion for me out of pure Christian feeling. You are in love with her. I have known her 3 days, Julian said stiffly. Your father proposed to me after 2. It runs in the blood. Do not be a coward about it. It is the one flaw I could never train out of you. The old lady rapped her cane on the floor. But you are right to go slow for once. In your headlong life, that girl has been used and betrayed by everyone who ever held power over her. If you want her, and you do, you must let her come to you standing up, from a place of safety in her own time. Or you will only be one more great person who took advantage of her need. Be patient. It does not suit you, but do it anyway. He did it anyway. Through the short, dark days of that winter, the Duke of Otterholme practiced a patience he had never before possessed. He did not court Clara. He let her settle, let her fill out, and lose the gray, pinched look of chronic fear. He let her discover that the wages came exactly as promised into her own hand, that the locking door was hers alone, and that no slap ever came. He watched her bloom slowly, in safety, into the woman she must have been before Lady Vane began her work. Quick, warm, and dryly funny. Within a fortnight she was beloved by every servant in the house, and indispensable to the dowager, who took to introducing her to callers as "My Miss Finn," who is far too good for the post and knows it. And Clara, in her turn, watched the Duke. He was aware of it. He felt her studying him across the drawing room of an evening, testing him against her long, dark education in the treachery of the powerful, waiting for the hidden price to surface. It never did. He was scrupulous. He was courteous. He did not once cross the line he had drawn on the road. And bit by bit, week by week, he watched the weariness in her give way, not to gratitude, which he did not want, but to something clearer and freer. The slow, astonished trust of a person discovering that a promise had, for once, been kept. It was the dowager, in the end, who forced the matter. You two circle each other like cats on a wall, she told them both at dinner one evening, with the ruthless directness of the very old. It is tiresome to watch. Clara, my dear, my son has been in love with you since the day he found you in the snow, and has been too honorable and too frightened to say so, lest you feel your position depended on it. Julian, your Miss Finn has been in love with you these 6 weeks, and dares not say so, lest you think she is after your title like every other woman who ever smiled at you. There, I have said it, since neither of you would. And now I am going to bed, and I expect the pair of you to have sorted it out by breakfast, or I shall meddle far more crudely, and enjoy it enormously. And she swept out, leaving them alone in the candlelight, scarlet and speechless, and at last, without a wall to circle. There was one evening in the depth of that winter that Julian marked afterward as the night he stopped hoping and began to know. A storm had come down off the hills, and the great house of Otterholme groaned in the wind. The dowager had retired early with a headache, and Julian had come into the library to find Clara there before him, curled in the window seat with a book and a single candle, unaware of him, her guard entirely down. She was not reading. She was watching the snow drive against the black glass, and there was on her face an expression he had not seen there before. Not fear, not weariness, but a kind of quiet, astonished peace, the look of a person who has, against all expectation, arrived somewhere safe. He must have made some sound, for she turned, and to his surprise, she did not compose her face into the careful blankness she still sometimes wore. She only smiled. I was thinking, she said, that a year ago tonight, I sat up in a cold attic at Fenwick, mending Lady Vane's daughter's gowns by a candle I was not supposed to have, listening to a storm exactly like this one, and being afraid of the cold. And tonight I am warm in a library full of books I am allowed to read, being paid honest wages, plaguing your poor mother, and afraid of nothing at all. I keep waiting to wake from it. She looked at him frankly. You did that, Your Grace. You rode past a gate and saw a thing no one else ever troubled to see, and you changed the whole of my life for the better, and asked nothing for it. I do not know how a person thanks another person for that. So I have stopped trying to find the words, and I only wanted you to know that I see it, that whatever else I am, I am not ungrateful, though I have tried very hard not to let gratitude be the whole of what I feel, because you told me on the road that you wanted nothing I would not freely give, and I did not want to give you only gratitude. Gratitude is not free, it is owed. Julian crossed the room and sat down in the chair across from the window seat, keeping his careful distance even now, and looked at her in the candlelight and the storm. Then give me nothing that is owed, he said quietly. I have enough of what is owed to me. The whole world owes me things and it wearies me. Give me only what is free, or give me nothing, and I will be content either way. But I will tell you a thing, Clara, since we are speaking plainly on a stormy night. When I found you in the snow, I did not think, here is a girl I may rescue and feel noble about. I thought, here is a person who has been treated as worthless, standing there being worth more than the whole household that threw her out, and I cannot ride away and let the world go on getting it wrong. It was not charity. It was not even kindness quite. It was closer to recognition. I saw something true, and I could not bear to see it wasted. That is all I have ever wanted from you. Not gratitude, not favor, only that you should be allowed at last to be the thing you truly are, where someone can see it. If that is all this ever amounts to, a safe house, a fair wage, and the freedom to be yourself, then it will have been worth every mile of that cold road. Anything beyond it is yours to give or withhold, and it will be no less precious to me for being freely given late than early. Clara was quiet for a long moment, watching him, and then she said very low, You are a dangerous man, Your Grace. Am I? Yes, because a woman could love a man who threatened her and know to run from him. But I do not know how a woman is meant to defend herself against a man who only ever hands her back to herself and asks for nothing. She looked down at her book. I shall have to think about it. It is a novel sort of danger. I find I am not in any hurry to escape it. And Julian, understanding that he had just been told, in the only language a woman so long betrayed could yet permit herself, that the wall was coming down, said nothing at all. He only sat with her in the firelight while the storm spent itself against the glass, content, for that night, simply to be trusted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire settled. Somewhere down the passage, the dowager's cane could be heard, tapping triumphantly away toward the stairs. She is not, Julian said carefully, always tactful. She is not tactful at all, said Clara. It is why I love her. Then she went still, hearing what she had said, and color flooded her face. Julian rose and came to stand before her. And this time he did not hedge, and he did not draw a line, and he did not hide anything in the folds. My mother is a meddling old tyrant, he said, and she is entirely right, which is the most maddening thing about her. I have been in love with you since I found you standing in the snow, refusing my charity. I have said nothing for 6 weeks, because I would not have you feel that your rooms, your wage, and your safety hung upon your favor to me. I would sooner have died than become one more powerful person who used your need against you. So I waited. I let you grow safe. I let you learn that the door was truly yours, and the promise truly kept. Dưới đây là phần chỉnh sửa và hoàn thiện trọn vẹn đoạn kết của câu chuyện. Đã xóa bỏ hoàn toàn các mốc thời gian, sửa lại các lỗi nhận diện giọng nói và chuẩn hóa định dạng theo đúng văn phong tiểu thuyết lãng mạn lịch sử Anh Quốc. And now that you are safe and free, and owe me nothing that you have not already earned 3 times over, now, and only now, I will say the thing I have wanted to say since December. He took her hands. I do not want a companion for my mother, or rather, I do, and you shall go on being one as long as she lives, and plagues us both. But what I want, Clara Finn, is to marry you. Not to rescue you. You rescued yourself on that road when you refused me. I want to marry you because you are the finest, proudest, bravest soul I have ever encountered, and because a house with you in it is the first house I have ever wanted to come home to, and because I cannot any longer bear to say goodnight to you at the foot of the stairs and go on alone. Will you have me? From safety, freely, knowing you may refuse and keep everything and lose nothing but me. Clara Finn, who had been thrown out of her own home in December with a bundle and a scrubbing post before her, looked up at the Duke of Otterholme. This time, there was no weariness left in her face at all, only wonder, and a joy so long deferred it had nearly forgotten its own shape. You waited, she said. 6 weeks you waited, so that I might choose you from safety and not from need. Do you know that no one in my whole life has ever cared what I chose? They only ever cared what I could be made to do. Her voice broke. Yes, yes, I will have you. Not because you are a duke, and not because you are kind, though you are both, but because you are the only man alive who ever handed me a choice and then stood back to let me make it. That is the whole of why. That I will love you for until I die. Julian drew her to him then, and kissed her at last in the candlelight of the house that would be hers. It was worth every day of the patience it had cost him. But there remained one account still to be settled, and the Duke of Otterholme was a man who settled his accounts. The wedding was held in the spring, and it was grand. The whole county was invited, including, at Julian's particular and deliberate insistence, Lady Vane and her 2 daughters. They came in a flutter of astonishment and greedy hope, having heard only that the Duke of Otterholme was to marry, and sensing, as always, an advantage. Lady Vane arrived quite prepared to claim a warm connection with the bride, whoever she proved to be. A duke's wife was a duke's wife, and useful. She did not learn the bride's identity until she was seated in the church, and Clara Finn came up the aisle on the arm of the Dowager Duchess herself. Julian watched the woman's face from the altar. He watched her recognize the girl she had thrown into the snow. He watched the greed curdle into disbelief, and the disbelief into a dawning, horrified understanding of exactly what she had done, that she had cast out, to save her daughter's arrival, the very girl who was now to become the greatest lady in the county, above her, and her daughters, and all their grasping hopes forever. He watched her go gray. He said nothing during the service. He was not a man for public cruelty. But at the wedding breakfast, when Lady Vane, recovering her nerve, approached the new Duchess with a tremulous smile and outstretched hands. "My dearest Clara, how happy I am. How proud. Of course, you know you were always as a daughter to me." The Duke of Otterholme stepped smoothly between them. "Lady Vane," he said. His voice was perfectly pleasant and carried, as he intended, to every ear in the crowded room. "How good of you to come. I confess I invited you for one purpose only, and I will not keep you from your carriage long. I was riding past Fenwick House in December, on the afternoon you turned your late husband's daughter out of doors with a bundle, and told her a scrubbing post at Harlow was more than she deserved. I saw it. I heard every word. I have thought of it often since. Each time I have looked at my wife, in fact, and marveled at what you threw away for spite, and what I found in the snow because of it." He let the silence work. The room had gone very quiet. "You will not, I think, trouble the Duchess of Otterholme with claims of a mother's love. She has a mother's love now." He inclined his head toward the Dowager, who was watching Lady Vane with frank and terrible enjoyment. "A real one, and no room in her life for a false one. My people will see you to your carriage. You will not be invited again. And you may reflect, on the drive home to the house that was Clara's mother's, before it was ever yours, that you had in your keeping the finest thing in this county, and used her as a servant, and cast her into the snow, and that a stranger riding past saw in 5 minutes what you would not see in 7 years, and made her a duchess out of it. Good day, Lady Vane." He turned his back on her, the cut direct, before the whole county, and offered his arm to his wife. He led Clara away into the warmth, the light, and the crowd of well-wishers, leaving the woman who had cast her out to gather her mortified daughters and creep from the hall, small, gray, and finished, understanding at last, and far too late, precisely what her cruelty had cost her. "You did that on purpose," Clara murmured, her hand warm on his arm, her eyes bright. "I settled an account," said Julian. "I have been settling it since December. I found it very satisfying." He looked down at her, his wife, his duchess, the girl he had found standing straight-backed in the snow, refusing a duke's charity. "But it is the smallest part of the day, and the least important. Come. My mother wishes to make a speech. God help us all, and I wish to spend the rest of my life beside the woman who taught me that the finest things in the world are the ones the world throws away, and that a wise man rides back for them and claims them before all." And he did.